It's been 2022, this year, 100 years from the one of the biggest events in modern Greek history, the expedition, the Greek expedition to Asia Minor, and the ensuing catastrophic collapse of this endeavor. I want to make several observations where things of the past really meet the present, and we can conclude very significant. We can conclude we can derive very significant conclusions from the past. Now, I'm not going to be doing a lamentation today about the fire in Smyrna. We will go tangentially about this, about the what happened in the waterfront. We actually have a very good film. That's now my second advertisement. The Hellenic Greek Festival, the Greek Film Festival of Houston, will bring Smyrna Moagapimeni, Smyrna Beloved. It's a very new production, and that production will be screened. We don't have the exact date yet, between the 10th and the 13th of November, again at the Match Theater. So please come to this event, this musical event, so you can be familiar with the place, and so you won't be able to have any problem parking next time when you will come for Smyrna Moagapimeni. This is actually, I watched a few aspects of Smyrna Moagapimeni, and I want to say that it is quite accurate in the historical presentation of the events. Today, I want to focus more on the international environment of the Greek expedition to Asia Minor, how we get there and what is happening, and primarily what was the role of the British politics, the British and the French politics vis-a-vis Greece. I will start with a little bit of a Greek reading. It's a very small one, a very short one. Most of what I will do, 99% will be in English today. This is from the bloody, the Ματωμένα Χώματα by Vivos Sotiriou, blood on the ground. She speaks about, she's actually a refugee from Asia Minor, and she speaks about the Greek expedition and also the ensuing collapse of the Greek front. And those are, what I'm going to read you is from the very last part. Εγώ σε σκότωσα και κλαίω γι' αυτό. Λογάριασε τι μου έφαγες εσύ. Αδέλφια, φίλους, πατριώτες, τα μελέτα μπούρια, ολόκληρη σφαγμένη γενιά. Τόσα φαρμάκια, τόση συμφορά και εμένα ο νους μου να γυρίσει θέλει πίσω στα παλιά. Να ήταν λέει ψέμα όλα όσα περάσαμε και να γυρίζαμε τώρα στη γη μας, στους μπαξέδες μας, στα δάση μας με τις καρνερίνες, τις κάλμες και τα πετροκότσιφα. Αντάρτη του Γιόρμε με, χαιρέτα μου τη γιο που μας γέννησε. Αν μη μας κρατάει η κακία που την ποτίσαμε μέμα. Ανάθεμα στους έκλειους. Ποιοι είναι λοιπόν οι έκλειοι? Who are those who are responsible for this? And before starting, I want to take a thesis. I'm not going to tell you, oh, everybody else was to blame and we were the innocent ones, the Greeks. No, we're not innocent. For whatever happened, we have major responsibility. And we have to be accounted for this. Accounted in the way we actually manage things. Now, 1914 to 1918, we have the First World War. And the First World War really marks one major event, the collapse of all big empires. The collapse of colonialism. What is the importance of colonialism? The exploitation of colonies brings transfers actually wealth from the colonies to the, well, to the colonialist lands, okay, to the colonial motherlands. Actually, those are, first of all, Great Britain, France, Germany also tries to get into the game, but quite late. Belgium, the Dutch, and more recently, close to 1914, Italy. Italy is one of the victorious. That's very actually the funny story. Italy is one of the victorious big allied powers in the First World War. However, Italy never won a single battle. They lost every single battle they fought. Their military and their navy were basically, I would say, to be parked outside of the Scala of Milan and listen to opera. They were totally competent. Oh, actually, they only won one little battle where there were just very small groups with the Austro-Hungarians and the Italians. That was actually in one main lighthouse in the middle of the Adriatic Sea. I don't recall the name of this little island with the lighthouse. The Italians tried to play, to behave more like the United States. And even sometimes more role, they want to assume more a greater role even than the United States. To understand what is going on, there is one big thing around around this war. There is a great realization that oil is more important as a source of power of ships and especially Navy ships. You don't have to solve the coal into the engines, into the boilers. And oil keeps the boilers at a steady pace function and actually can give you higher speeds. And you don't need to spend, let's say, about 100 people to just solve the coal into the engines. So what is the oil? We have, before 1914, we have Rockefeller, a big prospector, and Standard Oil. They start in Pennsylvania, and then we have Texas, and I believe you have seen all these in documentaries. But these oil fields were not very well exploited, so they started running quickly, not being very promising. So even in the United States, they believe oil that is going to be depleted very soon. And therefore, they have to look elsewhere. Where else? Well, the Middle East. And now, here is, we will read some excerpts. It's very good because if you don't see the oil game, you will not understand the international geopolitics of the time, and you will not understand where exactly Greece attempted to throw itself. George?
Yeah, thank you. This is an extract from a book called The Smyrna Affair, the first comprehensive account of the burning of the city and the expulsion of the Christians from Turkey in 1922. It's written by Marjorie Giusepiano. This is on page 65. I'll just pick up the story. It says, by 1912, 3 years after Hamid's downfall, it was apparent to all but Chester that the German interests had won out. These, with the help of Sir Ernest Cassel, German-born though British citizen, and an intermediary named Kalus Gulbenkian, formed the Turkish Petroleum Company with the German Deutsche Bank, the Royal Dutch Shell, and the National Bank of Turkey as partners, and with half of Turkey's share coming from Cassel. In 1914, only months before the war erupted, the government-owned Anglo-Persian Company took over Cassel's share in Turkish petroleum and bought out Turkey's share as well from the Young Turk government. When war came, the British confiscated Germany's share in the venture and promised it to France. Thus, when the war ended, the British, together with the French and the neutral Dutch, had a tight hold on the greatest oil find in history. Royal Dutch Shell was American Standard Oil's greatest competitor. The Allies floated to victory on a wave of oil, Lord Curzon proclaimed in November 1918. The Americans had perceived the technological advantage in time to construct an oil-driven merchant fleet before their entry into the European theater. But even when the price of oil had risen at a rate genuinely alarming to the United States Navy, American dedication to free enterprise had been intense enough to prevent any serious effort of government control, much less governmental entry into the oil business. And while America had stubbornly refused to declare war against Turkey, the British had directed their military strategy in the Eastern Theater with the oil fields very much in mind. Their dwindling forces in Turkey were now concentrated in such key areas. Because it was the transportation of oil that made the fuel prohibitively expensive to market, old John D. Rockefeller had himself tapped a gold mine some years before when he devised the idea of putting down pipelines. His Jersey Standard Company's activities abroad had been primarily concerned with transporting and refining the crude oil of other producers. It was not until after the war, when pipeline technology and tanker fleet abounded, that the Standard Oil Company of New Jersey committed itself to hunting down sources of crude oil wherever they could be found, with the result, as its historians have noted, that all phases of the company's foreign activities became complicated in the web of international and political intrigue. In February 1919, while the peace settlement hovered uneasily over the conference tables in Paris, Standard Oil President Walter Teagle, still unaware that the British had long since preempted him, was writing a memorandum to his directors from New York. I quote, "In the settlement of the division of Turkey, consideration should be given to the oil possibilities. I am wondering if there is any way we can get into the oil-producing end of the game in Mesopotamia." End of quote. Company representatives were sent to Paris, where they confronted the ominous possibility that the British might be planning to dominate that end of the game to the exclusion of American interests, a prospect that the company officials considered a greater menace to Jersey's business than a German victory would have been. Standard Oil Company prospectors, who had meanwhile been sent out to scour the globe, reported that they were being denied entry into strategic areas in Persia, Mesopotamia, and whatever the British were in control. A company agent was arrested in Jerusalem for attempting to prospect in Palestine. The British government countered American protests by insisting it had enacted similar prohibitions against its own geologists and those of Royal Dutch Shell. But the Americans were not reassured, and with good reason. Shell later acknowledged possession of detailed maps and charts of areas that their geologists were ostensibly forbidden to enter. American government were all the more incensed to discover that the British would quietly buying their way into what Americans considered their own territory by obtaining controlling shares in certain companies in Central and South America.
Thank you, George. So this gives us a little bit of the understanding of the new dynamics that are being formed. Okay, so the oil in the Mesopotamian oil, the Kirkuk and Mosul oil fields that are even important even today, were playing a very big role in the determining how the game was played. Now, you know much more Mesopotamia is the Euphrates, and the Tigris, the two rivers, ending up just outside of the Kuwait. And those were part of the Ottoman Empire, as everybody knows, or everybody knows. And on a little bit of the north, we have Armenia. So if I saw a map a little bit to give you some idea, I have a, that's not the map I want. I have a different one here. Oh, that one. Okay, so this is pretty much for the Greek expedition, but this area, well, this area to go here, this area was the big Armenia. The Armenia is actually, if you look at it, together with the Kunduz territories, more than 40% of Asia Minor, more than 40% of present-day Turkey. than what it represented back then. But with the expansion of the population in 1915, they reduced significantly the population to the north, close to the present boundary of Russia, with the various countries around the former Soviet Union, Turkey, boundary line. Now, in 1915, it is, when you have Lord Balfour promises everything to everyone, even even planet Mars to, whoever to the Eskimos, should they decide to enter the First World War. They promised the Jews to have their own country. They promised the Arabs to have their own democracy, their own kingdom, and they basically deceive everybody. They don't sign treaties, but they sign treaties among them. And the first treaty was the Treaty of London. There is a series of 3 secret treaties by then. The treaties became known to the public because the Soviet Union decided to publicize those treaties. For Soviet Union, Russia was the contracting party. So the first treaty was between Britain, France, and Russia, and granted the straits in Constantinople to Russia. When we say the straits, we mean the Kalipoli Straits and Constantinople. Here they granted the access to the Tsarist Russia. That's 1915, and then the British with the French would carve out the Mesopotamian and the Syrian region of the Ottoman Empire. Now, keep in mind that in 1915, the Ottoman Empire goes all the way almost to Egypt, okay? So it stops at the Suez Canal. It has almost the entire Arabian Peninsula. And its boundary, it basically touches upon Persia, which is the present-day Iran. So this treaty basically was that with Britain and France will find a way, a modus vivendi, with the Ottoman Empire. And then the treaty also at some point brings the Italians in, because they want the Italians to become part of the Allied forces, to create a diversion from the Austro-Hungarian Empire. Otherwise, the army of the Austro-Hungarian Empire could be in the Western Front, and then there would not be enough manpower there for the British to fight and the French. They would have had to deal with overwhelming armies. So they managed to get the Italians in. The Italians are not too good, as I told you before, but they want a part of the trophy, and the trophy is the Ottoman Empire. And Libya, that's what they get. So until then, Libya was part of the Ottoman Empire. Now, in 1916, we have the secret Sykes-Picot Agreement. And if you want to see what Sykes-Picot does, it basically creates present-day Syria and Lebanon as they are. It creates Iraq, and those were the mandates. Syria and Lebanon was the mandate for the French. Then Iraq was the mandate for. So with the mandate to create a protectorate, you don't create a country, you create a protectorate. The Iraq was the mandate for the British. There is no Kuwait. Kuwait is basically another invention, which is comes later on. And also the British will take the Hijaz, that's the part of the coastal line of Saudi Arabia, present-day Saudi Arabia, along the Red Sea, and Palestine. And of course, that's where they had the big problem. What are they going to do with the Palestinians and the Jews, the Jewish immigration? We're not going to touch this part here. But that's basically the Sykes-Picot Agreement. Of course, the Arabs did not know anything about the Sykes-Picot agreement. They knew only things that they knew the Balfour Declaration, and the Balfour Declaration was improvising for a Jewish state and a pan-Arab state with capital Damascus. One kingdom that would include Mesopotamia, Syria, and present-day Saudi Arabia. Of course, the Balfour Agreement, the Balfour Declaration was never put in place. By the time we were also talking, Balfour was the Foreign Affairs Secretary. And then the last treaty comes in 1917, and it's decided through Jean de Mauriac, pardon my French, and this is the treaty which basically tells that Italy will get this part of Asia Minor. I think this is a vector field, a vector form. So you see here it says Italian zone. Italian zone that goes all the way down, all the way south to the Mediterranean. Then there were also promised areas. So this area, and the Dodecanese. Also, that was the 1917 agreement, and Greece, of course, was not party of all of these treaties, but these treaties existed. Now, in 1915, as you know, the British, the Balfour actually, Lord Balfour, tried to elicit the help of the Greeks. King Constantine didn't want to participate in the war. I wouldn't entirely blame, because in Greece we have a history made for everyone. We have multiple histories, but we have a terrific product. It's one kind of official, very limited history, very cherry-picked, that fits everybody's tastes. Those love Brussels sprouts, so we can accommodate all this, but the truth is that in 1915, it wasn't very clear why the Germans would have won would have lost the war. Because they had the better army. They had the better army in terms of training, strategic maneuverability, tactics, weapons. The British, even until that time, they didn't really have a fully professional army. They created a professional army corps after primarily the Crimean War and after the First World War. So, but the Germans had a professional war since the Prussian times, since the time of Bismarck. So Constantine also was, along with other officers, one of them became later Ioannis Metaxas, was educated in the German Royal Military Academy of Berlin. And of course, he knew their tactics, he knew how they were fighting. He realized that it was better not to intervene in the war. But he comes very close to say, let's go. Venizelos wants to go because he basically wants to tie Greece's fate with Great Britain. At that point, he doesn't put any conditions, but the British throw on us North Cyprus in 1915, all of Macedonia, Eastern Thrace, Western Thrace, the Dodecanese, and Cyprus. And they tell us, there might be something for you in Asia Minor. For me, even if you believe that the Germans are going to win, it worth the effort. Because if you lose the war, you're not going to lose much. At that point, what could have been the loss? Probably half of Macedonia, Eastern Macedonia, and Thessaloniki. That would have been the worst case scenario. If we win the war, we win everything. So I think Venizelos was on the better side of history, but King Constantine had really very serious objections. Now, what happens? When you have clash of personalities, you cannot discuss politics. and national strategy. National strategy requires that various parties set aside their personalities. Nobody believes that has the right solution, and you discuss the solution with all interested parties. And you come to some conclusion. This is the only way you can do national politics. If there is one thing that we'll see over and over today that plays a very big role in the disaster that occurred in 1922, is that there are personalities who believe that everyone is better than everybody else, especially Venizelos. Venizelos is the person who concentrates all the jealousy towards his friends. And of course, Greece at that point doesn't have what we call statesmen. Statesmen must be able to accept the opinions of the other and reach out to the other party. We don't have that in Greece. And still today, I believe this is a very big problem. So now the war ends. We know what happened in the First World War. And I believe we all know, those who attend over the internet, the Allied forces win and the Central Powers lose. And one of the Central Powers is the Ottoman Empire. Now, this is the big chunk of wheat that has to be divided. They put it on the big later, and now they have to start carving it out. And that's where the big problem comes, because the Ottoman Empire has the oil, the Mesopotamian oil. They are to be left out from this. Now, Great Britain, at the end of the war, has about 3 million people mobilized, but has wasted a lot of money in this war. It's out of the sort of, I believe that if you have watched Downton Abbey, it makes a very good reference about the financial collapse of Great Britain after the First World War. They're basically out of money, so they have to demobilize people. Also, the prolonged war and the fact that the households and the soldiers facing extreme poverty because the men were out fighting, forces Great Britain to demobilization. But the fact that the hostilities have ended does not mean that the war has ended. The war has not ended. The war is still hot in the area where we are. And that's where the British don't want to have any forces. Well, the same thing is also true for the Italians. The same thing is also true for the French. The French don't, they all want demobilization. There is one more reason because they want demobilization. We have the Soviet Union that has withdrew from the war in 1917, and people go home and they start working. Of course, we have a civil war over there, but let's leave that aside. Theoretically, they go into a peace state and then negotiate peace with all the other parties, including the Ottoman Empire. And of course, the dominant theory is that we, the workers, should not fight the war of the imperialists because we have different objectives, different interests in them. So that theory starts permeating the working masses that have manned the British and the French armies. So they want demobilization immediately, otherwise they are afraid they may have an internal revolution. Now, the problem is that this state is not pacified. Who is going to play the game over there, the police office? Who's going to police? The Ottoman Empire. And here comes Greece. Greece is the handler. It's actually volunteering itself to say that we're not demobilizing, we will keep our army and we will protect the Allied interests, but, we want what the Greeks say to cut it is. Okay, we want something. That will cost you something. Of course, it will cost something. The British understand that. At that time, you have to see also the personalities, because when you do international politics, personalities also play a role. Venizelos is mesmerizing. You love this man at first glance. That's what Wilson said. Wilson, actually, President Wilson, was saying that probably is the most important figure in the Paris Treaty, in the Paris Peace Conference. Lord George was in love with Venizelos, basically. If they were living in today's states, you could say that these guys are in love with each other, because they have pretty much similar characters. They are both explosive and they are both sentimental. And sometimes they don't think very much. Now, Venizelos comes up with a very well-documented plan in the peace conference in France. That's basically 1918, 1919. Okay, the war ends with, in the theater of the Ottoman Empire, ends with the armistice of Mudros. If you don't know where Mudros is, it's somewhere here in the island of Limnos. It's a very big port, national port in the island of Limnos. So now, we have to discuss the details, the mobilization, which armies of the defeated parties will stay, and what will happen. So the independence is not part of the Paris Treaty Agreement, because they have negotiated a peace, especially with the Ottoman Empire element. And the peace they make is that they will curve Armenia, and there will be no distance. This is the part that is being discussed, but the Soviet Union is not talking to the Ottoman Empire, it's talking to the nationalists. And now the nationalists were the nationalists. In 1908, you remember, we had the neo-Nutris revolution that came up with a party which has a very similar name like the Erdogan party today. Party of Peace and Prosperity, and they come with a similar like brotherhood, justice for all, and equity. But they are nationalists, they're ultra-nationalists. And the ultra-nationalist part is the one that takes over, and that leads to the massacre of the Armenians, all the atrocities that happened in that at that particular time of the First World War. Now, the Ottoman Empire is being held accountable, and this is the first time that in world history, in world international law, we have references about mass crimes against humanity. Before that, there is no protection for civilians. There were protections for prisoners of war, but nothing for civilians. It is the first time that non-combatants are having, the world realized that non-combatants have to be protected, but there's no legal framework, and that's why we have some sort of tribunals like the ones that occurred after the Second World War. And those are exclusively for the Ottomans, for the Neo-Turks. Now, with the Neo-Turks, you have we have several, Talat, Pasha, Enver, Pasha, those are the ones. Talat was assassinated in Germany because he fled to Germany right after the war. But there's another figure there, the most important of all of them, Kemal Pasha. Mustafa Kemal was a colonel. The army was very good, actually, a very good strategist, and he is hiding in Constantinople. He's hiding somewhere in I don't know if you watched this film, this Turkish series on Netflix, The Pera Palace. Just watch the first episode of it. The Pera Palace was built as a luxury hotel at the end of the Orient Express line to serve Orient Express passengers, and especially the German passengers who would like to embark on the Railway that would start from Constantinople and go all the way to Baghdad. This was a project funded primarily by the Deutsche Bank, and you've heard a few details about this from George. Now, the Peripalace was built by an Armenian. It was owned by an Armenian, but there were many, a lot of capital was put by Deutsche Bank for this. In 1918, it passes into the hands of Bodosakis, the Bodosakis that you know from the Bodosakis institution in Greece. And ever since, until I think even recent years, after the Second World War, it stays in Greek hands, Greek ownership. So in a Greek owned hotel, Kemal Pasha is hiding. But the British know that Kemal Pasha has connections with the nationalists, and they really don't like that. And if you watch the story there, if you watch this bad series actually, then you will see that there's some sort of a lady friend of Mustafa Kemal called Peride. Peride was a spy. Actually, she was a double spy. She was working also for the British intelligence and for the nationalists. But she is trying to protect Kemal Pasha. Actually, she's, according to the series, she's not protecting Kemal Pasha. Kemal Pasha was protected by Lord Sforza, Count Sforza, who was the Italian High Commissioner in Constantinople. So in Constantinople, we have 4 High Commissioners, one British, one Italian, one French, one American. And they basically ruled Constantinople and they ran the Ottoman Empire. So Count Sforza, because the British don't really like very much Mustafa Kemal, gave him false papers, gave him an order to go inspect the troops in Sinope and Trabzon, which were in disarray, and put the troops under the control of the Turkish army that was still on the Armenian Turkish border, which was basically Soviet Union Turkish border. And over there, he goes over there because he has a friend, Kazim Karabekhin, General Kazim Karabekhin, who is the commander of the only standing army of the Ottoman Empire. The Iron Cities of Bodros improvised that this army would stay intact because it guards the boundary towards Soviet Union. Now, in 1918 and in 1919, the British start becoming very worried about what is going to happen with the Bolsheviks. Are the Bolsheviks going to go down south, months? They knew that they didn't have enough arms in Mesopotamia. They had about 18,000 soldiers in Mesopotamia. That was it. The French had about 6,000 in Cilicia. And the Italians had, no, the cap was, no. Overestimate was there in the public control. No real army, actually. So the only big army is the Greek force, and if you look here, the governors, there were about 6,000 here and 12,000 French in Constantinople. So this is basically the Allied force. Greek has an army, a standing army at the time, which is close to 150,000. So it can provide significant forces. It's an army that has been very well respected during the battles of the First World War and during the Balkan Wars. So Lord basically said, yeah, it's going to be the Greeks, and we're going to give them something. I love Venizelos, I get very well along with you. The Italians said, no way, absolutely no way. The Americans didn't want the Greeks in the game, primarily because they thought that the Greeks, if the Greeks occupy any area, Just wanted to do business with the British, not the Americans. So they wanted to get British out because they were eyeballing the oil fields. This is where the attention was there. So this is basically the dynamic there. And there were many fine details and many meetings. Venizelos really finds a very delicate, balanced political fight. And he comes with a very nice plan and says, look, we have a lot of people. Now people, since 1914, have been targeted. And many of them have been expelled. And the main population was sent to labor camps. In many occasions, especially for here, the Greeks were basically eliminated, and there was that was documented by French archaeologists who happened to be in the area. So we have a population over there. And we have the majority on the western coast. Okay. Now, this is really not true. Greeks were the majority in the area around Smyrna here. When we go to Albania, look at it. But it's Albania. It's a big novel, but like the others, talking about the trouble. Now, if we say that there are many Greek poems where there were not majority. One of the majority in Smyrna. Actually, all in part of the truth is better. When Venizelos emphasizes the numbers, and he says the Greek army has to go there, or Greece has to do something, or the Allies have to do something to protect the Christian population, which includes also the Armenians. That is the very clever plan of Venizelos. Venizelos never speaks about Greeks only, speaks about the Christian population of Asia Minor. Anatolian. It needs to be protected because the nationalists are going to go against it. We cannot leave them in the hands of the Turks unprotected. The Italians don't want to give real protection. They don't want the Greeks there. Venizelos says we can go and protect. And he puts the claim, which is basically this. All the way down here, across roads, you have Alcalá. So you have other places also have mountain. It goes all the way to Castelloris. And by the way, Castelloris was also given to Greece, was promised to Greece in 1915. So the Italians, Wilson doesn't want to give Venizelos what he's asking. And they are counter proposing that there should be an international force like a gendarme force that will patrol the area, that will police the area, and will be under international control. But then the Italians say Smyrna was promised to us. We want Smyrna. We are entitled to Smyrna. There's this Orlando guy, Prime Minister of Italy, who is an operatic character. He really acts as if he's on stage. And in this operatic moment, he plays Norma with humor, essentially, with the issue of humor. Now, where is humor? Humor is the present day Jacob. I don't have it on the map. But Fiume was at the end of the First World War a city that was primarily inhabited by Italians. It was part of the old Venice Empire. And Italy received Trieste from the Bulgarian Empire, but they also wanted food. And the Americans said, absolutely no way. Fiume will go to, for some reason that's not very clear to me. But Wilson will not discuss anything about it. And Orlando makes the mistake that if the Fiume issue is not going to be discussed, what we're going to talk. Now we're in 1919. And they walk away. And when they walk away, Lloyd George learns that happens around that happens actually at the beginning of 1919. He says he goes actually at the Hotel Venizelos. We know we have this account from Venizelos' secretary. And obviously, before you go into a meeting, and we do that even in organizations, okay, before we have a critical vote, we actually massage the votes. We just talk to people. We do the vote collection on the phone. We just don't go there without working the environment a little bit and see what happens. That's actually what Lloyd George does. He calls Venizelos and asks him, we know this from Venizelos. Venizelos feels from the phone call that we are getting Smyrna. But Lloyd George asks him, can you provide troops to Smyrna quickly? And Venizelos says yes. And obviously there's something said on the phone, and Venizelos, when he hangs up, tells his secretary, actually he's crying. Tells his secretary, I think, I forgot his first name, I think it's Andonis. Andoni must need Smyrna. And we have to go to the conference right away. So they are waiting for his car to come. He walks out, he's crying, and then probably that's a little bit of a myth. A cat, as he walks out of the hotel, a cat runs over him. The cat that belonged to a high-class lady. She's with her children, with her furs and everything. And the cat jumps to Venizelos and stays on him here short. The lady says, I'm sorry, sir. In French, this very Paris, after all. And takes the cat and actually makes a compliment to Venizelos and says, I would like to take you out to dinner if you have time today. Do you have time today? Venizelos says, I'm very sorry, ma'am. I don't have time today. Smyrna is waiting for me. When he gets into the car, according to Mark Andonakis, he bursts into tears. And Mark Andonakis said these were the tears of months of intense pressure. He breaks down. And at the meeting, Wilson doesn't talk, Lloyd George does all the talking, and says, we decided to give you the administration of Smyrna. Can you disembark a police for an armed contingent to exercise, to take over the authority? And you are as a police force. That's very important. And of course, another thing, to Smyrna, they disembark. They disembark in May 1919. I don't remember the exact date. It's May 15th or May 19th. During the disembarkation, there is a big movement. The Turks know, and there were some shots fired. The Greeks, Colonel Zafiri made a mistake. That was actually kind of imposed by the other very big sentimental personality, a very big patriot, Chrysostomos Kalafatis. the people of Smyrna. So the Sultan Calafakis and the trustee or the leadership of the Greek community want the Greek army to go by. That was a mistake because the Greek army had to go very quickly, as clandestinely as possible, with the minimum exposure, the city to occupy the barracks or the troops that they had left. They violated. Yeah, you will need the way at the very end. And soldier fight. The soldier would fight from the sea, from the side of the sea. And now, of course, the Greeks take up immediately defensive positions. They start fighting in many directions. The parade is over. Then they go into various parts of the city because there is a uprising, and this uprising cost the lives of about 70 people. Those are 17 people, and many troops were injured, but all the casualties were Turkish casualties. As a result, 2 soldiers were put into court martial and they were executed, 2 Greek soldiers, because they returned fire without having to return fire. Disproportionate defense. But this particular incident really inflames Turkish nationalism. So now Turks say Constantinople is gone. What is Constantinople? The Caliphate capital. That's the capital of the Caliphate. Smyrna is gone. The Greeks, what are we left with? We have to fight for our country, especially this occupation. The way it is projected to the Turkish people is that Smyrna is occupied and the Greeks are occupying now our land. That actually boosts the outrage of the Kemalist forces, or the nationalist forces. And this is where actually the Kemalist forces start picking up. So this is the general environment. Now what happens next? 1920, we have the Treaty of the Serf. The Treaty of the Serf is very heavy conditions, sanctions, battle. And it's a treaty that only the Greeks can implement because the Greeks have the force. So we have to 90,000 troops. Now, this is not a very well defended position. You have to defend and fair. It's another 45. But here, not a good defensive position because it's flat land. How can you fight in flat land? And I will have the enemy all behind you because the Turks are not coming as an organized army, they are coming as organized guerrilla factors. The Czechs. So the Greeks always have to clear. Now, we have to do a little bit harder. Now, this is British control territory. Okay? So if you move here, then you have the British on one side, the Arabs on one side. So your flags are going to protect it. On the side of the Italians, you also have the river Wales, Potamos. It will not for once in the natural fortified land. It's your natural boundary. So in 1920, this becomes the area that is being occupied. And Greeks actually moved also to Argos and Ghana. And this eventually where we end up in 1920 after the Treaty of the Sevens. After the Treaty of the Sevens. The Treaty of the Sevens does not give us this area, but Lord George, because he wants to minimize the expense of British forces, says, okay, move on. Now, at that point, there is also a little bit of a change in the British politics. So you have Lord George, who is with the conservative party, but he's from Wales, he's very sentimental, and plethoricos, very magnanimous personality. Similar to Venizelos, very similar to Venizelos. On the other hand, we have Lord George, who is very reserved. He's the foreign secretary of Great Britain, and basically he hates everything and anything. Primarily, he hates Lord George. He can't do business with Lord George, but they are forced to stick together because they have a coalition government. I think also used to say that there are two foreign secretaries. There's the Whitehall, where I basically am the secretary, but there's also Downing Street, number 10. And the number 10 secretary can supersede the other age. That's what we used to say about him. Now, the Americans have another person, important local, Admiral Bristol, who absolutely hates Greek and Armenians. He considered them of being inferior race, and the superior race according to Bristol were the Turks. So he does this. He later on becomes member of the board of Standard, but he's there for the oil. And there's something that we actually need to clear. Wilson, we believe that President Wilson was doing the foreign policy. No. President Wilson had his own realistic view of foreign policy that is encapsulated, it's compressed into these 14 points. You can read the 14 points of President Wilson on the internet. The Department of State has changed the policy entirely. It's doing an oil policy because oil is the big thing. So they decided that the foreign policy of the United States should be the one that promotes the financial interest in the business of the United States. We should not control the businessmen doing business without protection because of the Department of State, because everybody else is doing this. The British are promoting their own business. The French are promoting their own business. We can't leave ours, this go on their own. So that's the different policy. The policy of the Department of State is the one that actually takes over. Now, in 1920, of course, after the Treaty of the Serbs, Venizelos, there's an attempt of assassination of Venizelos in the train station, the Lyon train station in Paris. It's an unsuccessful assassination, but Venizelos is shaken by this incident because he believes that he should return as a hero. Instead, he's having a negative perception. Now, the opponents of Venizelos are the ones who have they ally the royalist parties. Everybody who is not with Venizelos had the liberal party. And they unite against him. Also, there is a change in the mood for the Greek army because the war has ended in 1918. But in 1920, we still have 170,000 soldiers. We still have soldiers who have been, they should have been already discharged, and they have not been discharged yet. And they stay there. And who is working the field? Who's supporting the families? No one. The families are in poverty. So there is this great sentiment for demobilization in Greece. Greece is the only country that has not been demobilized at that time. Venizelos doesn't sense this thing very well. He believes that he wanted, I think here I have a map of how it looks. This is one of the maps of the Venizelos time. It agrees with all its demands and all its gains. So, except for one thing, when the way this map was printed, No, Cyprus was not given, Greece was given to Albania. And Venizelos actually ceded no interest to Albania because he had his eyes in it. Smyrna had a big power. It would be an economical big power of course, for British should enable to keep his head. And look what also were given Eastern trade. Almost our center conservative is at that, which is a very small line. So you have a very good defense here. Of course, in present day, you have a land invasion, you can have a sea invasion from that side, but there are ways around the problem. Land invasion is more easy. You have a small front concentrated forces. When I did this, I should win the elections. And he goes with the system pretty much like the system we have here. Whoever wins the one region takes all the positions, all the parliamentary positions. Plus go. And back then, they were using the little balls. So you cannot calculate exactly how many voted, but we believe that Venizelos did not get the majority. This is the election of November 1st, 1920. Venizelos loses the election in 1920. In 1920, there are only two parties, the Liberal Party and the Unified Opposition. The Unified Opposition started. So the Communist Party of Greece, which came with the motto Spirite Patti Elia Stefani. Elia Stefani was the royalist, the royalist England, and of course, no Spirite Patti, the Hammer, the Sickle in the Hammer. Sickle in the Hammer, the Wrath and the Olive. That's exactly that. This exactly was, if you can imagine, the Communist Party of Greece siding with the royalists. If this is not opportunism, I don't know what opportunism really is. This is the people. Venizelos loses. Now, at the time, the interests, the different interests have changed, even inside the British cabinet. Greece has only one supporter, Lloyd George. Lloyd wants to support Greece because he believes that the Greek army can do the job that the British army cannot do at this time. Otherwise, the British would have had a national revolution inside London. Okay, that would have been the case. The French don't want to have army, but also there is a change in Gardner and Mansour leaves in we have a different prime minister. I think I have the name somewhere here. I'll get the name later. So my memory doesn't help me at this time. But the different prime minister who is more of a colonialist. And he doesn't want to keep Cilicia because after the Sykes-Picot Treaty, he feels that the boundaries of Syria, or the mandate of Syria, the mandated Syria territory and Lebanon are okay without the Cilicia territory. But he's actually interested in preserving the financial interests in the end. So after he preserves the financial interests in the area, they come into some secret agreements. They come into secret agreement with the nationalists, and they abandon Cilicia. The same thing with the Italians. The Italians also have an agreement with the nationalists. And what Kemal does, that's something very clever. What do you want, the French and the Italians? You don't want to have army, but you want your financial interests protected. Okay, we will protect them. We will do something for the capitulation. The capitulation was basically a free opportunity, no taxes, no duties, privileges. And also came from the Ottoman times, even in the 19th and 18th century, even before. some of them. The British are the only ones who need to have armor because they need to protect Gallipoli and Constantinople. And there is a little bit of French armies, I said, in Constantinople. So no one wants to back Greece anymore from the other two allies. So they step back. And the United States is shown from the very beginning are no supporter. They became incidentally supported because of the Orlando attitude. But also Orlando is now gone. So Greece has only one supporter, Lloyd George. Inside the British cabinet, Churchill said that we're better off with the Turks. Because the Turks can control their territory. He didn't believe the Greek army could hold all of Asia Minor, and if the Greek army would stay in Asia Minor for 10 years, they would have led Greece to financial collapse, and then they would have to withdraw. So as long as the approach was we have to do something for the Christian population, but we have to go to the Greeks who have to have the Turks. The Turks. Most of you vice in South of India, you represent the Indian interests. The office of the colonies, secretary of the colonies, was expressing the utmost dismay and disapproval of the situation of the Muslims in India. And because India now at the time was having awakening, it didn't want to, the British wanted to play the Muslims against the Hindus in India. So they didn't want to alienate the Muslim element, Indian part in general. And the Muslim element would have been alienated because of Constantinople, because of the Caliphate. They couldn't see the Greeks occupying Constantinople, and they also didn't want the Greeks to occupy Smyrna. So he was against Greece. So you have a foreign secretary, Corson. Corson said, yes, we have to do something. He was pretty much in line with Churchill, but he said the Greeks had to go up. We have to give them land somewhere else. So Corson, even in 1920 and 1921, was of the idea that there should be a full withdrawal from Asia Minor, even if with a voluntary withdrawal of the population, of the Hellenic population of Asia Minor, and the Greeks giving it trade as a goal. That was basically the view in the cabinet. Now, everything goes on the battlefield. Why? Because there's one person, Lloyd George, says, well, let's see what the Greeks do. The Greeks is a fighting force. If they blow, if they achieve a significant blow into the power of the nationalists, then we're done. There's no more danger. That is wrong. And the question is, what the Greek army could have done. In 1921, I have to go back to my Asia Minor map here, because we now start seeing. So this is the 1920. As the Greeks move, the main forces of the nationalists withdraw. We think Russia, Napoleon was advancing. That was Kutuzov's strategy. Let's advance. And what does Kutuzov fight? That was the question, the question of all Russian generals during the 1812 war. Where are you going to 1914, 15? Where are you going to stand in the fight? Kutuzov stands outside of Moscow to fight at Borodin. And he said, we're not going to win Borodin battle. What we're going to do is to create losses. We want Napoleon to bleed. And what he does then, he abandons Moscow. Kemal says, and why? Because that's the end of the railway line. The railway lines are the only lines that we have now. But the lines supplies now from the east and the north. The ones are the Bolsheviks. Because the Bolsheviks believe in, they say that Kemal's fight is a proletariat fight against the imperialist force. And this is exactly what Kemal says. We fight for we're poor people, we're fighting against imperialists. And Greeks are imperialists. Now, of course, the Soviet Union didn't like us because we fought against them in Ukraine in 1919, but that's another story. Okay? It's a very complicated story. So they have no real reasons to back us up. And they back Kemal with money and with weapons. Gradually, also the French and the Italians, actually the French started supplying Kemal with weapons. But that comes later, comes 1921. So the Greek army says, we're going to move. Our first move was from Jerusalem. Because there were two main lines, one line that comes from Constantinople, Sparta, and another line that comes from the Bible anyway. This was a plan well. So we started to come together here. And that's 1921. Okay. July 19th, July 17th, 1921. At that point, there is a parade that is organized, a PR, I would say a big PR operation. The Greek government with women brings the King Constantine, to Asia Minor. There's big fanfare, King Constantine is paraded everywhere. Now, the impression that goes into the eye is that King Constantine is in charge. Constantine was not in charge. Constantine had the British. He had also heart problems, and he was barely able to stand. He was withdrawn. He was depressed, severely depressed. And there is one discussion that makes in Caffe. And I'm going to read this from my phone. We need glasses. We need to magnify this. The other one. So there is one discussion with Zulmanis, who was the head of the army, and Constantine. Zulmanis says this time, that's before the operations of 1921 against Ankara and Afghan-Karahissar. Αυτή τη φορά δεν πρέπει να μας διαφύγει ο Κεμάλ, πρέπει να τον πιάσουμε. We must not miss Kemal this time, we must capture him. And Constantine replies, ναι, αλλά για να τον πιάσουμε πρέπει να θελήσει να σταθεί. What was this? This is precisely what Kutuzov did. Napoleon. He never really fought Kutuzov, except at Borodino. But he never stood to be caught. Even he withdrew from Borodino. He disengaged. So that Constantine says, King Constantine says, and I believe he has, despite his personal problems, he has military mental clarity. Yes, but we need to, in order to capture Kemal, he must make a stand, he must stand somewhere. We cannot always chase him. And then there was a Metropolitan Chrysostomos, another Chrysostomos, this time of Ephesus, went to visit him and asked him, Your Majesty, have you decided to lead the army against Ankara? Now Chrysostomos describes, εν τελευταία λέξη συνεκρότησαν τον βασιλέα, ώστις εγερσής διέρος και ενώ η όψης του είχε προσλάβει μια καταφανή εξισμού, κατάφερε το γρότο προαυτού γραφείου, συγχρόνως δεν την κεραυνώδη φωνή του απήντησε. Θα υπογράψουν όσοι βέβαια θα εξακολουθήσουν απειλισμένοι τον αγώνα, θα αμυνθούν προς Αγκύρας, θα τους καταδιώξουν εκεί. Με πόση δυνάμει θα φτάσουμε πρώτης Αγκύρας. Κατά τη μάχη του εσκήσε χείρ, αυτόν Καραχισά, εκ των 8 καραχιών μόνο 5 έλαβαν μέρος στον αγώνα. Οι άλλοι 3 εφύλατον πλευρά. Ταύταν και συγκοινωνίας, ένεκα της εχθρικότητας του πληθυσμού. Εάν προχωρήσουμε προς την Άγκυρα, εκ των 5 δεν θα μείνουν 2 καθοδόν προσφύλαξη. Καταρρά λοιπόν να φτάσουμε εις Άγκυρα με το 1/3 των δυνάμεών μας. So this shows that as we move in, we have to be true to the right. Now, the big problem of the Greek island was from the philosopher today. There were several people who were left behind. You need to have lines, you need to have your defensive lines also in the party, because we have a hostile territory. All this is hostile territory. There's no Greeks there. There's finally very few Greeks, but mostly this is Turkish population. Now we're in the Turkish Smyrna. This is indeed an imperialist expedition. Why do we go for it? We don't want to defeat it. We simply want to defeat Kemal. The plan was to go defeat Kemal and then come back into this line. Or if not this line, this line. All the way south, where we get a majority of Greek population. This is not new. There was Greek population, Greek speaking population back then in the Byzantine time, but after the centuries occupied the area, many centuries ago, they were turned into, they joined the Muslim faith. So there were a lot of Greeks. We're doing this only to capture them now. In 1921, they start this expedition. The expedition has one big problem. You are away from your supply lines. The supply lines stop here. And then they have to move very slowly through without many trucks. The Greek army did not have many trucks. We were using mules. All this is very slow defense, very slow supply line. So when our armies fight here in Caligrotto is an area which is a very defensive area. Kemal put a lot of lines there. This was Kemal's third line. It was a fourth line of defense before Ankara. In Caligrotto, the Greek soldier was being fed 50 drachma, 51, something like 120 grams of grains per day, and a little bit of meat if they had meat. They were mostly killing animals if they were capturing them and cooking them. Most of the soldiers were from Παλιά Ελλάδα, they knew how to cook meat. So the supply line was very small, very little, and there was not enough ammunition. They were heavily to save in ammunition. So here, in the third day of the fight, basically gives up. General After the borders, we draw back to this line, and of course we go there and we occupy the Asuka line. Because Asuka is even more important strategic point because you have also other lines. You have the line, the railway line from Smyrna. With the Baghdad connection with the Baghdad railway. So that's where we stay after the end. That's basically September 1921. After September 1921, you cannot do anything in this area. This is the Almira Erimus. This is a desert area, and it's like a step. It becomes wet and muddy after September. That's the statement of the Greek army. At that point, he is desperate for solution. A solution. So we keep the army there just to be able to get into the diplomatic solution. Before the Ankara operation, the British offered a solution. They said, look, we're going to offer what we offered before. Complete withdrawal from Asia Minor. On this area, which is Christian population, will put an international gendarmerie guard the area that will have command, international command, not English command. But this will be all US. And you will take care, you will get this guy, the greater. You will get that. And British will keep this is demilitarized mode. Military, that was otherwise demilitarized. Under international, the treaty was that to allow international traffic with no control of local states. So you can have military ships and merchant ships coming through both. They died in the Bosphorus. So this was basically the deal that was offered to Greece. That deal was on the table before that war, before the expedition to Ankara. After the expedition to Ankara, that deal went off the table. And even Lloyd George lost his faith in the Greek army. Jan also lost his faith in himself. And then there is one new model for everyone, Ikare, which means let's go back home. Because the army was tired, these men were tired. And the Greek army, really, because they had to keep many units guarding the back. But they were also, charismatic, as we call in the Greek army. There were people who had their accesses, one were known to the power, and they were serving in the nice regions, officers, and privileges that were not service in the front line. All of these things existed. So out of the 220,000, basically that we were able, give or take, to amass for this expedition, our force was about 100,000 on the front. And the Turks had something close to 9,000, but they had more cover. They had almost twice as much the cover that we had, and they used the cover. So in 1921, we had a very bad, now I'll show you a different map. No, a different map is a little bit more detailed. We have this line. And now we go to the Italians. So we stay here and cover all this. In 700 kilometers from. And we also have 70,000 troops. You cannot have a one line. So we have a similar stage in what we do like a lot of orders and getting into a paper. That's exactly what Tamala is. Tamala also had something else that we didn't have. Had very good intelligence. He knew exactly where the Greek troops were, he knew exactly what we had, and how thin our units were. And also, what was happening is that we could not keep were exploited. And in March 1922, actually even before March 1922, in December 1921, the Greek government has run out of money. Woolrich is trying to find money in London. He says that there will be guarantees. He tried actually, he went to the city saying that there are guarantees from the British government. The British government told the bankers there are absolutely no guarantees. Not kidding. If you want to borrow, to lend money, but we're not going to back that, those loans. And they do this because they want Greece to be succumbed and come to the negotiation table. So in January, there are entirely out of money. The money is only good for 20 days, and the army has not been paid for 2 months. So Protopapadakis, Petros Protopapadakis, talks to Gounas. Gounas is desperate. One day, he tells him in January, Dimitro, τη βρήκα τη λύση. I found the solution. Έρευε. Άσε με στον πόνο. Λέω εγώ. Όπως είναι ότι βρήκα τη λύση, ωραία, πες μου τη λύση. Λέει, θα πάρεις το κατοστάρι, αυτό, that's $1, okay? This $1 has George Washington in the middle, but the Greek money, even for those who are older and remember the Greek money, they had George Stavros here, and they had another. So we got this part. The part with George Stavros stays with the people. The other one, they have to give it to the banks. The banks confiscated it. They take it out of circulation. And that, no, so they don't give it to the bank, they keep it, and the other part will become a bond. The bond. The bond will have an interest rate of 7%. And it will be paid, I don't remember, in 10 or 20 years. I don't remember what she said. Essentially, far away that it will never be. This is the Greek Koranico in the first Koranico. Yes. And Koranico, or the term from the other time rating. So the 1990s, late 1990s. So with this law, so now you can be at that point Greece had an estimated 3 billion drachmas in circulation. You cut the half. This only represents that would be $1. That would be worth now 50 cents. So you cut by 50% the circulation. And the government issues new money, what they have withdrawn is now borrowed from the people, and uses it to pay the island. And that's how we paid the island at the beginning of 1922. With this money. This was a brilliant solution because it's an internal law. That was, of course, later on was announced. But still, there's not much time, okay, because Dracula has lost its value significantly. So you cannot buy weapons. We have shortages of ammunition, shortages of supplies, and then there are some ideas. There's a desperate idea. Let's go march against Constantinople. Let's occupy Constantinople. This was one idea that was coined and they used it as a negotiating plan, as a negotiating point to because in order to withdraw the Greek population from Asia Minor and of the Army. This solution was also offered around March 1922 by the British, but with one caveat, an extra caveat. There will be full withdrawal of the Greek army from and Asian place would go back to Turkey. But it would have been an orderly separation of the two forces by 10 kilometers, 10 and 10, 12 more 10 to their direction, a 20-kilometer buffer zone. The Greek army will gradually move in a time of 4 months. The Turkish, we don't want this, but we will sign it if the Greeks do an immediate demobilization and immediate removal now of all the troops. That would be not possible because you can't move an army in days unless the army runs. And we didn't want to do that because we wanted the Greek population to follow to have an orderly movement outside, not only exodus of Asia Minor. So the two do not agree, and this agreement does not come into place. The last movement, the Greek army will lead on its own. At this point, not everyone is watching. It's watching the drama unfold. And at the very end, just days before August, so the hostility started out August 28th. Now we'll go to my other the military map I have. Coming to the close. Because if you want to do that, to draw a parallel, I have the parallel here with present-day Ukraine. You see, this is exactly the mistakes sometimes of being repeated. The right condition. What the counter-offensive of the Ukrainian armies did was to push them here. So now they are on the front, much better organized, much more populated because they had only the shadow of 200,000. Okay, so they concentrated all of the sources here. Same problem with us, not enough manpower. They need at least, according to Western calculations, 700,000 people guard the territory that would be guarded. You couldn't do it with this manpower. Same thing with us. So they had the ability, and actually they did a good consolidation of the front. We didn't have that ability in 1922 to do a good consolidation of the front. And here is the Afyon Karashisar. So you see the protrusion. Now we're here in late August, and this then we got what here? The Greek army knew that those were guys. They were basically doing, I would say, inventive accounting of forces. So they would use some movable forces, some detachments to fill in the gaps. Well, that doesn't work. Because first of all, we had only one line of defense, no second line of defense, and very thin. When you have a very thin line of defense, you can very easily be overcome. And that's what exactly Kemal did. He came in with, he penetrated very quickly here with the cavalry. And very soon, he was on the and there was a big problem of communication between and coordination between the different forces. They were using either telephone lines or the wireless. Fortunately, despite the moved the wireless of the number one, from they moved it away. So for the critical daily battle, the forces could not communicate with one another. So no one knew where the other forces were. They were assuming. They were assuming that on this side, I'm having Plastiras, but Plastiras wasn't here. It was engaged in a different battle, so we couldn't cover that area. There was no time for another. If you're attacked, what are you going to do? And the main part was here to Luguna, this area, because that area was fortified and controlled an entire area. Each moving the troops now have full control here. So the Greek army hastily with a lot of civilians, all of them, starts moving, and they are moving. I don't know if you watch the Ten Commandments with Cecil Demille. They move like the Jews. It's like a human way, and they go into this area, the Aniveran, which is a slow passage, but that passage can already be captured by the Turks. And then the night, all the with the civilians has to go through this area, and the Turks don't really touch them, they bombard them. And the Turks have no guns. After that, the Greek army runs, and they run like animals, not like soldiers. There's no orderly retreat. And from that point on, everybody, the most converts. The two big units, first corps, second corps, whatever is remaining, because most of the Kurdish part was actually captured with the Kurdish. The high command didn't know that he was arrested and was captured, but he was prisoner. And one day after his capture, they give him the Max Magistratus, the supreme commander of all the Greek forces, and he learns the news from Kemal. So actually Kemal comes and said, I want to congratulate you, General, because we just learned from our dispatches that the Greek government has appointed you Commander General of all the Greek forces. Papoulas had withdrawn. There was a disagreement of the government and Papoulas. Papoulas was leading the so-called Mikrosetia, the people's defense of Asia Minor. I don't want to get into that. This also brought out a prominent figure, but it's good one. So 30 years ago, President Wilson was actually advocated at the end of the World War, self-determination of people. So they said the actually come and issue a proclamation, I think around August 17th, with the old date probably the end of August, proclamation that we declare Ionia as an independent state under the auspices of the Turks, of the Ottoman Republic, the Ottoman Republic until 1923. And they asked for the protection, they hope at least for the protection. Nobody wants to intervene at that point. They say, let things follow their way. As they go, let the flow. The events that will all the others because they are ready to do business with Japan. We have lost the war, and you know the rest of the story. How it goes. And I believe I can close here with just one thing. If you see the root of the problem, the root of the problem even in 1922, where everything had clearly collapsed. March, there were no hostilities in March. April, there were no hostilities there. June was still calm, but the tide was turning against the Greeks. What the Greek government was doing was to form a unity government, put all the parties together, come to some sort of agreement. Even Constantine, at that point, was coming about the idea to give up his throne, abdicate, and have George II, the well-known George II, become king in an attempt to appease the armed forces. But this didn't even work because everybody was ready for the new order, the Kemalists, to do business with them, who had lost in the battle. Our time was now one front, we lost. Now things are improving. Why we lost it? Because we didn't have to do. We had the Communist Party who was not helping. We had the Royalists that were not helping. The liberals were always saying something different from the government. There was no national consensus. And when you have projects like this, like Asia Minor, with no national consensus, no national strategy, a tactic that you will follow the battlefield and outside of the battlefield, which is globally oriented on a realistic basis, not on the basis of what we're going to tell the people, or what we're going to tell in present day in the night bulletins when they will call us to give an interview. This is not the way politics for that kind of scale of operations is conducted. You really need vision, information. We didn't have information. Our intelligence was really down to zero. And we didn't have good military planning. Our military planning was really very poor. And I don't buy the idea, oh yes, the Royalists replaced all the Venizelos friendly officers. These are the things that the official historiography reserved because they want to make you feel better. They can give you drugs. No, you can put marijuana inside history books. It will make you feel better if you find the leads. Okay, but history is history. History has to be true. And then we want to make everything really work for the new version of Greek politics, which has a mellow left, a mellow right, a mellow center. Everything is too mellow and looks like a moose green. This is not the history. The history is that Venizelos' party made mistakes. Venizelos walked a fine line. Chicago, if he had stayed in power, probably he would have averted that catastrophe. Who had probably ended out of Asia Minor, but with a better deal for the Greek people. At least we could probably put Smyrna under international control and sanction, and the Greek population moving with their possessions and their money to Greece. That would have really made Greece great financially at that point. Now, the coming of all the immigrants, the Greek immigrants from Asia Minor, really helped Greece to be homogenized nationally, to become a nation state, really, right, in the sense of populations, were right after 1922, with the refugees from Asia Minor. Now, those who want to take the modern refugees with the then refugees, I'm sorry, you are entirely confused. There's absolutely no connection between the two. These were Greek populations that were living over there for years, for centuries. The present day immigrants are just economical immigrants. Yes, desperate, I understand that. But Greece is in no position, even Europe is in no position to solve these problems. Those are more global problems. So I'm going to stop here. If you have any questions. Alexander.
Two questions.
Yes. Yeah, I didn't mention Sangari would be operational before against Ankara. Yes, and it was Sangarios because we walked around closer to Sangarios River. So Sangarios is big. And the two the battle was here. The third army and first and second.
Second question, what happened with the Italian song?
Oh, the Iranians gave up the song.
When?
1921, they're already out. Yes. They have moved all of their troops out because they have come into financial concessions with with Kemal. So they no longer need to have an occupation area. Yes. Yes.
The final battle at the scenarios when contact between first and second corps was lost. And the gap opened up for.
Oh, no. Shanghai, we don't have the loss of the contact between the first and the second. This is in Africa and South where the Turks now counterattack. Now the Turks counteroffensive.
You know,
In Sangarios, in the Battle of Sangarios, the second, for some strange reason, the second army corps takes a position behind the first. And although the plan was for the second army corps to open up from the right, from the south, from here, and occupy Grotto. I mean, Prince Andrew didn't do that. He disobeyed the order.
They didn't know that that caused the collapse of Baghdad.
No, I don't think this. I don't want to get into the details, but I don't think this was the collapse. I don't have particular sympathy for Prince Andrew, who was actually the brother of Philip, of late Prince Philip. The father. Yes, the father. So the father. And the husband of the late queen. But he didn't deserve to have that position anyway. He was replaced after that.
He was the commander of the second corps.
He was the commander of the second corps. He left the first corps, and he never moved that way. But there is one problem. I mean, he claimed that he didn't know who would keep his left flank. And I kind of buy that because when I look at the military operations in Asia, I see that there was a big problem of command and control. The field marshal was learning everything 24 hours later. And the units did not know where they were, where each one was ending up. They were assuming that a unit is there simply because that was the plan. But when you go to war, plans are retired. The war imposes its own plans. The reality of the battlefield. And this was the big problem all over. This was also a big problem here. That's not going to shut. It was a clear command and control problem. That was, I believe, more important than the biggest ally that the Turks could have.
Well, at
Yes.
this point, at this stage, at the farthest extent of the Greek army, where was Venizelos at that time?
Venizelos loses the elections and he is out of the country. Usually he goes to France, Tunis, and at that point, 1921, he was Helena doing Mexico, Helena speaking, right? He's doing Mexico in the United States, but he's not trying to. Actually, he does some powers against this military operation. So if you see the discussions from whatever we have, at least recorded, you don't see a battlefield, you see wishes, you don't see a real plan. And don't see the other block why this plan won't work. Give me one reason why this is going to work. And what will happen if this will not work? What's the plan B? There was never a plan B. But even if you look, here, the Greek army retreats. And there is no one to say, look at these lines here. They here or here. Do you know where the Greek army is from? Just met. Right here. That was the evacuation. Forces that were below Smyrna take up defensive positions and also there are significant mountains around Smyrna. I want to close with one little video that I have. It's very nice. It's in Greek. I will translate a little bit in English. And I'm going to go to the end of the video, because here at the end,
Ποιος είναι ο Φρέντι Γερμανός?
ένας δημοσιογράφος ήταν.
Δεν διαγνώστης ήταν. Ένας επαναστάτης στην Επανάσταση. Το Γερία έκανε μεγάλο αγώνα στην τηλεόραση.
Now, this is very interesting because you see Smyrna here. Now, this is 1970s. It's the Smyrna, the Smyrna coastline. Of course, you see all the buildings are new because the old buildings were demolished because they were burned. But this is precisely the geographical region where all takes place. And this is a bus tour, and the tour guide is talking to the people.
Sicura è quello che ci fanno come parola, che devono vedere che poi le qualità.
It still exists. This other building behind was still exists. This is how I also remember the call of Smyrna. When I visited in 1978. Now, when I saw newer videos, you saw this little promenade, the street at the beach. Now they have extended the coastline further in the sea. So this is actually that there's a lot of free space that the Turks created way after this video, I think in the 90s, in order to give more biking space to run, to walk. This is a very big city. Anyway, other questions? Anything from the internet? Okay, since we don't have anything, I'm going to close here. Thank you very much for watching. The recording is being stored.